going to stand for the gospel reading.
I was so taken by that anthem and the appropriateness of it that I just was into it, let us say. That's okay. I appreciate that. This is a long passage. If you weary while standing, you have permission to sit down. But will you give your attention to these verses from the 8th chapter of Luke's Gospel? Then they arrived at the country of the Gadarenes, which is opposite Galilee. And as he stepped out on land, there met him a man from the city who had demons. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he lived not in a house, but among the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him, and said with a loud voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beseech you, do not torment me." For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many a time it had seized him. He was under guard and bound with chains and fetters, but he broke the bonds and was driven by the demon into the desert. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" And he replied, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. And he begged him not to command them to depart, and they begged him not to command them to depart into the abyss. Now a large herd of swine was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him to let them enter them. And so he gave them leave. Then the demon came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep slopes into the lake and drowned. When the herdsmen saw what had happened, they fled and told it in the city and in the country. Then people went out to see what had happened, and they came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had gone sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who had seen it told them how he who had been possessed with demons was healed. Then all of the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked him to depart from there, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone, the man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him. But he sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." And he went away, proclaiming throughout the whole city how much Jesus had done for him. And friends, this is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Let the word of our God and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer.
You may be seated. Thank you, Bruce, for those words of introduction. It's always my pleasure to worship with you here at Aldersgate. And it's good to be here with you this morning. I was standing very close here to the chancel at the beginning of the service and waiting for the right time to come and take my seat. And the acolytes and the cross-bearer were here. I hope you noticed how angelic these three seem to be. If you missed that, you watch for it next Sunday. For they were so into their role as acolytes that it was a beautiful sight to see. And your faces were definitely a blessing to me this morning. And I thank you for that. Amen. I guess I shouldn't mention this, and I might be in better shape to preach if I don't know, but I guess I'm the only one in this room that doesn't know what happened in Orlando. When I get up on Sunday morning and I'm preaching, no television is turned on and no other media is turned on because I'm spending a last hour or two focused on what I'm going to try to do. So I haven't heard anything, and I don't want you to tell me now because it very well could affect my emotions as I prepare to speak to you. Have you ever thought that you were imminently facing death? Have you ever had that experience? Well, I had that experience once or twice, have had that experience once or twice. One of them was on a cold winter day. I think it was in January. A night came early, and most of the staff had left the church. Really, all of them had, except for me. And I had some things left over that I had to finish before I went home. And I thought the building was all locked up, and I was there by myself. But while I was turned to the wall, or window rather, facing the credenza where I was writing, I suddenly sensed a presence behind me. And I turned around, and there was a man, perhaps the most terrible, awful-looking man I had ever seen. And I'll be honest with you, I thought I was going to die. I really did. And the first thing he said didn't really help me that much get over that feeling. He said, if I don't either get help or get some drugs, I'm going to hurt somebody before the night's over. And he went on to tell me that he had a severe drug addiction and that he had been without a fix for several hours, and it was arriving at the crucial point where he had to have his drugs or he would literally go crazy and hurt somebody and rob them and get the money he needed to buy the drugs. Well, the bright spot in that was that he was willing to look for help and that he was willing to take the time before he rushed out into the community and rob somebody, maybe getting killed himself, maybe hurting someone else really bad. And if he was open to help, maybe there was something that could be done. So we talked a while about his situation, and I then got on the telephone and started calling the places I normally called for things like that. Started out with Methodist Healthcare System and found out they were all filled for positions of treatment like that. Called all the other places in town that I had come across at various times, including the private places and governmental places and so forth, and I got nowhere. About 7 o'clock, time was getting on. It was black dark. Well, I called our mayor, who was a member of the church I was serving at the time. And I just told him, I said, I've got this man here who is in really bad trouble, and he's got to have help, and he's got to have help tonight. Well, I explained a little more, and the mayor got on the telephone. And he started calling people. And I'm sure he was offering to call in some chips that he had from various people and some favors he was due from various people in the area. But he wasn't finding anything different from what I found. Every place was filled up. This was 30 years ago, when probably things were as bad or worse as they are now with the drug addictions. And then about 10 o'clock, he was still in his office, still calling, and the man and I were sitting there passing the time. The mayor called back, and he said, "We've found some help." And he told me where to take him and who to ask for and what to do. So we did that, and I turned him over to this particular group of people that helped drug addicts and left him in their care. And to be honest about it, I breathed a sigh of relief as I drove away from there. And guess what? That was, as I say, was 30 years ago. This man was in a mess. This man was demon-possessed. And yet, he received the intervention, he received the help that he needed. He was open to it, and he became a new man, a whole man. That was 30 years ago, and today, I saw him not long ago, in fact. And he was proud to show me his business. He is now a respected businessman in that community. He is active in the faith community. He did not stay, I didn't get him to stay in Methodism. That wasn't his background. But he found himself a place in another faith tradition. He's serving faithfully as a Christian disciple. He runs a business that is honorable and respected. And he has a new life. That's what God really wants for all of us, isn't it? As we deal with our demons. Now you stop me there and you say, but now what are these demons? We don't use that language very much, do we? We don't want to think about having demons inside of us. And we don't really know. You know, there's been 2,000 years of history has passed since the New Testament days to now. They had different understandings of things 2,000 years ago than we have today. We have different language by which we describe life's experiences, and we do different things to try to help people and heal people. But we still know about demons, don't we? If we're honest about it. We know when something gets hold of us. We may not want to admit it, but we know when something gets hold of us. It can be drugs. It can be alcohol. It can be that we have become workaholics. It can be that we have let our greed overtake us. It can be that we have let our prejudices possess us. And we can go on and on and on, can't we, about the demons with which we all deal. Think about that. I had a church member one time, and she was literally so prejudiced against other people that she let her prejudice possess her and drove her mad. Now you say, wait a minute, that's a preacher story. No, it wasn't a preacher story. It was something that happened right here in this community and happened when I was pastor of Colonial Park, just 3 or 4 or 5 streets from here is where she lived. And she was so obsessed with her prejudice and her hatred that it took control of her. She decided that these people whom she hated so much were living upstairs in her attic. And that thought just literally drove her crazy. I'm sad to say, unless something happened after I left that church and left my ministry there, unless something happened to intervene, she probably died that way. Because nothing I could say to her would get her attention and change her mind about anything. Our demons can possess us. How many times have you heard stories about what happens when the gambling addiction demon gets hold of us? Counselors that I have talked with say that in their experience, these are through the Methodist health system, that some of these people you hear about who die in traffic accidents on the way home from Tunica are not really accidents. That they have gone so far in exhausting their resources, chasing a dream, fulfilling their addiction, that they see no other hope but to end their lives. And when that happens, it means that we have not recognized and sought to intervene in a way to salvage their lives. This man we're talking about was not a pretty picture, was he? Can you imagine a man who was really in the animal stage of life, not wearing clothes, not living in a house, but living in a cemetery in the wilds? He had been forced, as we say, out of the camp into the desert, into the wilderness, and he was living as an animal with the animals. He was such a danger to the population that when he came near the town, a force of men would hold him down and put chains and fetters on him, and he would be staked out somewhere where the people thought they were safe. But whether it was his animal strength or the power coming from the demons or whatever it was, they could not build fetters and chains that would hold him. And he would break loose and attack the people like a rogue tiger or a rogue elephant. He was a threat to everybody. He was an animal, if you will. So here we are. And he confronts Jesus and he says, What do you have to do with me? What are you going to do with me? And that's when Jesus asked him the question, what is your name? And the answer he gets is that his name was Legion. A lot of commentators on this passage say that this very well could have been a reference to the Roman legion, the military organization of the Roman government that divided the soldiers up into legions. And you know how many men there were in a Roman legion? It ranged from 5,000 to 6,000. So this man is saying, I've got this war going on inside of me. It's like having 6,000 warriors fighting inside of me, and it's driven me absolutely mad. This reminds me of Paul writing about the conflict within himself and the war that went on inside his own body. Remember that? In Romans 7 and 8, how he talks about what he would do, he can't do, and what he wouldn't do, he finds himself doing. This war was going on. It was pulling him apart. And that's what this man is testifying to here. And if something didn't happen, it would surely ultimately destroy him. Many of those around us are carrying those, quote, demons. We have issues going on inside of us, inside of our heads and inside of our hearts that can destroy us if we do not find some way of an intervention. This man had Jesus to intervene. We may be able to find some people who care enough about us, or we may care enough about some others to figure out an intervention for them. I have helped several families within my churches to plan family interventions for their loved one who was becoming an alcoholic. And it is a heart-rendering experience to see these family members plan this intervention, because they know if something doesn't happen, they're going to lose their loved one. And that's what has to happen to any of us. And you know, we're not too far away from God for God to reach us. Sometimes when I have talked to people about accepting Jesus and about becoming a Christian, they would say, well, preacher, I've just got so much going on in my life. You have no idea of all the things I'm involved in and all the things I'm doing that Jesus cannot tolerate. And I'm doing so much wrong, and there's so much rottenness in me, that as soon as I get myself straight, as soon as I get my problems worked out, I'll be ready to let Jesus come into my life. Now, do you see the problem with that? The assumption is that he has the power within him to heal himself of his demons. And everything that we know tells us we do not have that power. If we have that power within us, then it would not have been necessary for Jesus to come and die on the cross for us. But the rest of this is that there is nothing that can be wrong with us that God cannot reach us and heal us and redeem us. And if nothing else, this passage and this man's experience should convince us of that. Can you think of anyone, yourself or anyone else, that you've ever known that was in worse shape than this poor madman of the Gerasenes? He had become an animal. He had no sense of the spiritual realities of life. And yet Jesus was able to cure him and heal him and make him whole again. Think about that. And what Jesus did for him, he stands ready to do for us and all of those people around us if we will accept what God has for us and pass that on to those around us if we truly believe it to be possible. Did you notice the mission that the man who was healed receives from Jesus? You see, he appreciated what Jesus had done. He wanted to go off and be with Jesus. And I can understand that, can't you? But Jesus said to him, "You stay here and you tell what God has done for you. You tell what has happened in your life so that other people will know that what happened in your life is possible in their life." And that's a part of what it means to be a disciple, isn't it? It means to tell a beggar, another beggar, if you will, where to find bread, where to find what he or she needs to experience the transformation of God in life. And we have a role in that, not only to receive, but also to share. This is an ugly story. It's a heartbreaking story. You think hard enough, you may know some people around you who have similar stories right now. And it may be that we are carrying the answer to that person's problems around with us every day. And it's time that we shared that and help God do His business with this person. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
We're going to sing a hymn of invitation, He Touched Me. If you are here and feel the presence of God, either touching your own life with healing and transformation, or inspiring you to reach out and touch someone else's life with your testimony, then make that offering to God. If you want to share that, you share it, but make that commitment in your heart as we stand and sing.
Stand for